when I started to practice, I didn't know what I was doing. I sort of had no idea what I was doing, but I'd begun to pick things up spiritually. I'd had encounters where went into heaven and things like that, which were, let's say, trance-like experiences where my body seemed to be suspended from its sort of surroundings, and I was completely aware of where I was in that spiritual perspective. And I learned to sort of have more and more of those. But then it was like, okay, how do I perceive when I'm in this realm what is spiritually going on around me in the room? And in those days we were having meetings and different things. God was sort of moving in those meetings. What was happening? What could I see? So I tried to practice. So I thought, okay, I can see with my physical eyes. Can I use my spiritual senses to still see in a way that related to the physical and the spiritual in the same realm? And I just sort of tried to sort of practice doing that. And, it wasn't immediate that I could do it. So there were two ways I would do it. One is I would stand quietly at the back of the room and I would look at the room and see the physical room. Then I would close my eyes and I would look to activate my imagination to continue perceiving the physical room. Now, you can do that by memory, obviously. Well, you know what's in the room, but maybe things are changing in the room. So I would just begin to picture the room using my imagination with my eyes closed. Now, to start with, I close my eyes, black, couldn't see anything. But then I focus my intention on the room. Okay, so I'm then looking to tune into that room in a different way than my natural eyes tune into it. But I've got the reference point of my natural eyes to give me a starting point. So I started doing that, and it sort of like was all hazy and fuzzy to start with, but I just kept going and focusing and focusing. So then when my eyes were closed, I had the impression of the room. And that was a visual impression or a sensory perception, let's say. And then I began to tune into the spiritual frequencies that were going on in the room. And then I could see angels and I could see people giving off different colors. And I became sort of more tuned to the spiritual dynamic of the room, which was great. And it was like, wow. And then it was like, this is too much information. So I'm receiving too much information then. So then I would open my eyes and, well, could I still perceive? And I could. So I was seeing the physical, and then I was seeing with the eyes of my heart superimposed. So I could see the room, but I also had the perception of the spiritual dynamic that was going on in the room. So that was all practice. And I tried various things during that time. Here's my hand, I'm looking at my hat, I'm closing my eyes, can I still see my hand? I just used various techniques to see if I could tune my senses in that way. And, eventually I could do it. And then at one point I was doing, and I didn't sort of like, how do I stop doing this? So it was like it was too much information that was overload and quite distracting to everyday life to be like that. So I sort of asked God, well, how do I turn this off? And he said, well, by intention. It's your choice. You can see and you can choose not to see. So, oh, okay. Okay, so I'll choose not to see. And then when I go into a room and I want to see, particularly if you're in a room, there's a dynamic of things happening, God's doing something, you want to tune into what he's doing, then I'm going to activate those senses to do it. And literally, I sort of asked, well, how do I explain what I'm doing? And he said, well, you're engaging the room with your spirit, a little bit like sonar or radar. With sonar, you send a ping of sound into the room, and then that sound bounces back off an object as an echo, and you have a screen that picks up the echo, if you like, of that bounce back. And so that's how I sort of perceived what I was doing. I was engaging the room with my spirit, then I was receiving back what the spirit was sort of feeding back to me, like radar or sonar, and so I became tuned. Now, a radar operator or a sonar operator isn't actually seeing the actual object. They're seeing the reaction to what they've engaged the object with. So I was perceiving what my spirit was engaging the object with in the room, and I sort of practiced until that became something I could do whenever I wanted to, or whenever I felt I needed to. It wasn't like I did it. I did it less and less as time went on, because I got sort of more in tune in general. And I felt less of a need to do that unless I really felt the Father's heart was there. In the practicing stage, God, gave me the permission to do whatever I want to practice. It was like, hey, have a go at this, and then when I could do it, I only needed to do it when the Father's heart was showing me to do it, really. So that's really what sort of frequency, vibration, they are scientific terms that relate to something that are connected, but have different physical and spiritual sort of dynamics to it, if that makes sense. If you enjoy these videos, would you please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe? It really does help. Thank you very much.